You're listening to Grain of Salt, a podcast hosted by Donnie Bertlis and Christa Seishu, covering the Buffalo Niagara region's food and drink scene. Today's episode features Christa talking with Brandon Davis and Patrick Finan, the founders of Block Club, about the integral role that vision and design play in creating and sustaining a successful restaurant. They'll also discuss the recently revealed branding for the new Hotel Henry at the Richardson Complex.
Today, here on Grain of Salt, I'm here with Brandon Davis, who is co-founder and creative director of Block Club, and Patrick, you know what? I always say your name is Finan. Is that correct?
You are correct.
Okay.
You're the only person who gets it right.
Finan, who is co-founder and principal of Block Club. And Block Club does a lot of things, but today we're going to really focus on the part of your job that really is about creativity and branding and design and vision. Mm-hmm. And I would like to just let the audience know that we're friends. Mm-hmm. We have these conversations all the time. Yep. So we hope we're not too shorthand with the audience. But we're really excited to sort of share some thoughts that we have about restaurants or food-based businesses and how they choose to move their vision sort of forward with branding and marketing and maybe even decor as well, because certainly that has something to do with it, don't you think, guys?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Sounds good.
So one of the things that we talk about all the time, or that I talk about all the time, is that when people ask me about the difference between Rochester and Buffalo, because I didn't know this, but there's like some sort of beef, unspoken beef between Rochester and Buffalo. Have you heard this before?
Yeah, absolutely. So
now, see, this might be because I'm not from Buffalo originally. I've only been here 20 years, but I'm not from Buffalo, so I don't get that.
Well, so I'm not from Buffalo either. I'm actually from Rochester.
Are you
No,
really?
no. I'm not. I'm from Buffalo, but I was born in Rochester.
Oh.
And it's interesting to hear my parents' take on the difference between Buffalo and
Rochester.
Rochester.
Let's hear that before we get rolling.
I mean, this is a very 1980s take, but what I hear all the time is that because of the companies that really turned Buffalo and Rochester into the cities that they were and are today, Rochester historically has always been white collar, and Buffalo's always been blue collar. And I think even though in Buffalo, for example, all the factories are closed or many of the jobs are gone that made Buffalo, one of the wealthiest cities at the turn of the last century. We still very much are blue collar people and have that kind of like salt of the earth, friendly, laid back approach to things. And I think Rochester,
which I was going to say makes us better.
So Brandon, you're just poking the bear.
There we go. Yeah. Just keep poking. No, but in Rochester, it had, with Kodak and Xerox and Bausch and Lomb and stuff, had more white collar jobs. And as a result, the people had different attitudes about all sorts of things. So, so there is some little like rivalry.
Right. So the perception is that Rochester thinks it's better than Buffalo. That's
right.
Buffalo's
But
perception.
we're better than Rochester.
And
do you also know, as a side, Buffalonians say that city differently than people from Rochester? And now that I've learned the way that Rochesterians say it, I say it like a Rochesterian.
Okay, let's hear.
So Buffalonians say Rochester.
Right.
And people in there say Rochester.
Oh, how very white collar.
I know. No, we have tons of friends in Rochester, and it's funny how when really we should just kind of embrace each other because we're in the same boat.
We really are. I mean, there are very different, I would say, general feels about it. If there's a feel about both of our cities, they're really different. But there are great things to be embraced in both cities.
Yeah, and kudos to the people who've like stuck around to like kind of embrace their city's renaissance or turnaround, and it's we should be kind of partners in this, not enemies.
Yeah. So just on a side
even
note,
though Buffalo's a better city.
On a side note, we do have a Facebook page that is for Buffalo Rochester Food and Beverage Collective, where we are trying to work harder to bridge the gap between the food scene and the drink scene in Buffalo and Rochester, because we have a lot to learn from each other and we all really like each other. So,
and I mean for the farmers too, and the food, the food purveyors. There's all. I mean.
It doesn't stop and start the way restaurants do, right?
Exactly,
There's farms all between us, right?
Yeah, that we share, right?
But so the thing that I always say that's the biggest difference between the food scene in Rochester and the food scene in Buffalo is that in Rochester, the majority of the restaurants are owned by business people, and they hire cooks or chefs to come and work for them. And so they approach their business from a very business-oriented sort of point of view, meaning that they've hired a designer, they've hired a marketing team, they have a great wine list, they're really focused on having manuals so that the front of the house is really run very smoothly. There's a lot of sort of presentation aspects of Rochester restaurants that are really well honed and thought out. I would say that I do think that in many instances the food is not as fantastic as I want it to be. Now, that is a blanket statement. There are definitely exceptions to that rule. There are many restaurants in Rochester that I adore and eat at regularly. But I would say that the big difference is that in Buffalo, most of our restaurants are operated by chefs. And so they're very food-focused and food-driven, and a lot of sort of the finer points of the vision in terms of the aesthetic and the design and the marketing and even the wine list or front of house behaviors have a tendency to be a little more lax because it's just not where a chef is focused. A chef is focused on sort of making the food the best that it can be. And so I think we have a lot we can actually learn from each other. And I'm just sort of wondering what you guys think, what your take is on that.
I've long had the same observation. I wasn't aware that most of the restaurants there are, owned by a business person. I just always observed that I would go there, and my overall experience from a brand perspective was better because from reading about the restaurant in advance online to walking in the door, seeing the interior, being greeted by service, and then having also a very good meal, I've just found some of my experiences in Rochester to sometimes be, from a comprehensive brand standpoint, just they're kind of hitting all the marks in a better way.
Okay.
Just recently in Buffalo, am I starting to see that come to fruition here?
Right.
And that's something that I think that when somebody owns a restaurant and they are a chef, their craft is their food, and they get it really well. I think that there are exceptions to this, certainly, but there's just a lot of instances in Buffalo where, and you and I have kind of talked about this because over our walk and just running in over the years that we've known each other, that oftentimes I just think that sometimes we'll get like 85% of things right and then just miss the mark a little bit.
Right. And sometimes I think that's just because people run out of capital.
Right.
And also because we are chefs micromanage and they're sort of DIY people, but we are really at a DIY stage in Buffalo in a lot of respects. And because of social media, everybody just feels like they can handle everything themselves.
Right.
But the truth is that no one can think of everything or do everything that needs to be done.
That's exactly
and
it.
even tasking those things out is challenging.
Yeah. I can't cook for the life of me. And that's why I love eating out so much.
Right.
And that's why I love to see what chefs are making and just experience that. So if ever there were an opportunity in Buffalo for people to think in advance to have the capital to invest in that, sometimes I don't know if it's as much of not having the money or not planning to have the money when they open the business in the first place.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Well, and I think that this conversation, sort of the comparisons we're making between Rochester and Buffalo, lead me to this idea that there are really three different kinds of restaurants. There are restaurants that function as businesses and it's all about the bottom line and customer experience because it's a money business. There are restaurants that function as stages for chefs. And I would say increasingly for perhaps cocktail bars.
Totally.
And then there are restaurants that are sort of hybrids of both based on who owns them and what their skill set is and what they bring to the table. And so I'm just wondering from a design perspective, and maybe we could start by talking about the three businesses that you guys have most recently worked with that are pretty high-profile restaurants, all located within a pretty small area of one another, all opening within the same couple of months. So let's talk about that a little bit, and like the challenges you had to give such different identities and how you worked with the customers, because all of those restaurants are largely chef-driven and product-driven, but they really all made a decision to kind of do things differently than they had done before in their own careers as restaurant owners, or that they'd seen other people do. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, I just want to say really quickly, I think it's, I think it is difficult when you have the confidence to start a business and take the risk of opening a restaurant. One of the most challenging sorts of businesses to open. I mean, failure rate among restaurants is higher than any other business.
Yeah, it's almost as high as the divorce rate, I think.
It's pretty wild. It might even be higher.
I think it's higher than the divorce rate.
And you probably also will get divorced.
Yeah, probably.
Start a restaurant.
Yeah.
But I think it's very difficult for a business owner who has the confidence to invest hundreds of thousands of dollars into a new venture or more to say that they don't know something, and that is something that takes a more mature, experienced business owner to say, hey, I'm good at this and I'm bad at that. And so when the stuff that I'm bad at, I need to hire the right people to help me realize my vision for the business that I'm trying to create.
Right.
And so I think in restaurants, just like any other business, you got to have the balls to start the business, and then also the kind of grace to say, I don't understand this part. And that's really, really hard to find in someone, especially if it's their first venture.
Well, and maybe people who especially have a career that is associated with having an ego big enough to kind of put yourself on a plate every single day 100 times.
Yeah, I mean,
and be like, this is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
You want to pay for this right now.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if you're a chef
Yeah.
or a restaurant or a bartender, you're on display and you're only as good as your last meal. Right. And, it's the same sort of, we feel that way in the work that we do. We're only as good as our last project. And so every project needs to be better than the one before. And that's hard to keep up with. So I guess what I'm saying is that, I think we should give kudos to the restaurateurs, whether they're business owners or chefs or maybe the people who are more comfortable behind the bar, like for admitting that they don't maybe understand all parts of their business yet, or have the vision to say, hey, I'm good at this, you're good at that, and I need to bring in the best people to help me realize my vision so I can create the best experience for my restaurateur,
right,
or for my customers as a restaurateur.
Right.
And
So Brandon, I'm going to have you. Yeah, Hydraulic Hearth just delivered some pizzas. Apologize
Awesome.
for the beeping noise
No,
in the background. Now we're going to
can't
get to
wait.
listen to these lovely gentlemen crunch into the microphone.
Yes.
Yeah.
So Brandon, can you highlight for me the 3 projects that we both know that we're sort of talking about,
Yeah.
and then share with me some information about that?
Sure. So we just recently wrapped up, and a lot of the work that we've done is actually not fully in the restaurants yet, because there's been some things that have just gotten in the way a bit. But we recently worked with Buffalo Proper, the Black Sheep, and Ocean in different capacities, but all at the same time that it turned out.
Yeah, that was kind of crazy.
So there was challenges in all of that, but particularly within 2 of them, which happened to take on this very Art Deco feel.
Right.
And so there was challenge between, and I'm speaking for Buffalo Proper and also Ocean, but both had a very distinct part of Art Deco, which was cool.
Right.
And I think that there's a lot of challenges in that, but what keeps us really focused is knowing the business and having a good relationship with the restaurateurs, whether they're it's a business or if it's, I mean, they're all businesses, but whether they're chef owned or what. But it's just a matter of understanding them and presenting that story authentically, and really presenting to the public a very distilled, authentic brand for that business.
And that business that the owners and the people who work there identify with and feel is their own, even though they didn't dream it up.
Absolutely.
That's a super challenging thing. It's like having somebody else name your baby.
Right.
Yeah, you know what? And I want to say what I think is really important is that we have this. We work with huge corporations, some local, regional, national, international corporations. And when you're working with a restaurant, and especially the 3 restaurants that we mentioned, they're all significant investments and significant businesses. But there's a unique situation for us because there's a tie-in to the chef's personality, and all of them are chef-owned in some capacity, right? So there might be other partners, but they're all chef-owned or operator-owned, right? And so we have this obligation to appease them as like this is their name, this is their baby, this is their project, right? And then also as an outside consultant, give them the kind of the tough love to say like, hey, like this is your idea is valuable and it's interesting and it's important, but we have to build the brand that's best for the target audience that you're trying to attract to this restaurant. And sometimes the chef's or the owner's vision for the business they're trying to build and their own personal tastes don't always line up.
Well, I have heard stories behind your backs. Very nice stories, but stories about like, well, they had to come in and they were like, said this and this, and I said that. And then they were like, no, really, you got to think about this, know?
Yeah.
And everybody appreciates that, though, because we live in a town really that is so friendly and so excited about anybody willing to make an investment and put their ass on the line that a lot of times it's hard to find truth tellers when you're making major decisions about anything. And I think you guys probably find that in your business. I find it in my business.
Absolutely.
Even with friends, you like want somebody to give you the hard truth. Yeah. And there isn't always somebody there to do that. And I know you guys are very gentlemanly and I'm sure you deliver it in a nice way. But, if somebody has a bad idea that is just going to kill them, you have to tell them.
Yeah. I mean, wouldn't you want to know, like, it's like in dating, right? When you date you meet someone and they're like a bad egg, right? And when you break up with them, your friends are like, "Oh yeah, I totally knew that. Or, I totally understand. Yeah, I told you that." And you're like, "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" Like, why did you let? So we feel like in our job, it's really important. It's not always easy to tell someone that, but if you say it respectfully, and also, I think Brandon does a great job of giving a compelling reason as to why this might not be the best option, and offering a better solution.
See, that would be hard for me. I would just be like, this sucks.
Yeah.
I mean, and then they want to know why, and you can't be like, I just know it sucks. Like, I can't explain to you why it sucks. It just really sucks.
Sometimes you just have to get down
it would
to
be
that,
really
but
hard for me to quantify the levels of suckage, So how, Brandon, you end up being really diplomatic all the time, I guess. Which I think probably is pretty natural for you based on what I know about you, but...
Well, there might be screaming inside my office and then diplomatic communication after that. But I try to be, and I ultimately understand that it's only an opinion that I'm putting forth.
Sure.
And it's ultimately my client's choice, and I can only make so much of the compelling argument that I can. But usually we've got really great clients. They trust us. They really do trust us.
Well, you know what else?
And I just want to say, like these three restaurants, I sort of think to restaurant people as sometimes being a little bit kooky.
Well, and that's why we're fun.
Yeah, I know.
Well, no, not at all. What are you talking about?
But that's a nice way of saying it. And I'll say that like these three projects specifically, they really trusted us in all instances, and sometimes got some of the least critical feedback we've ever received from a client.
Really?
In doing the Black Sheep, the Gedras were just like, you get it. This is so good. Like they loved everything that we did for them, and that was really fantastic because I think that we understood each other, and we'd been eating it at Bistro Europa forever. It was our favorite restaurant in town for a very long time.
Yeah.
And then that happened, and we got it, and it was like such a great process. And I can say the same.
You know Steve, right? Like you wouldn't like Steve was, just like a sweet angel client. I don't know how else to put that. Like he was like so.
It was during
so
a calmer time when he wasn't in the kitchen all the time.
Well, yes.
And if you know, and I'm saying this because. I as like an amateur like home cook, like I always look to what Steve's doing and his innovation, and like I really appreciate his food so much, and that's why it was so exciting to work and like such an honor to work on this project.
Yeah.
And but also like some of the conversations I've had with Steve, and like my sister worked at his restaurant before. Like Steve's like
Steve's a pretty crazy cat.
He's a crazy cat in the best possible way, but. Oh my gosh,
way,
he was one of the like sweetest, most complimentary, like responsive clients because he's so passionate about what he was trying to do.
I've known Steve for a really long time. I've known him since he was a 17-year-old fry cook.
Yeah.
So like making chicken wings. So I know Steve. I've known Steve a long time, and I would say that I think part of that is because he sort of unintentionally or just because of it happened adopted branding and a vision when he bought Bistro Europa that wasn't really his.
Right.
And he lived within that and functioned within that for a long time. And so I can imagine, even though Steve he's not really an arty guy. He's not really a visual guy outside of his plating. It's not really his thing. You might be able to tell by his T-shirt collection. But but I think that, he was probably really relieved to have somebody sort of look at what he does and make it come to life in, a font and a logo and a...
That's kind of exactly what I was just speaking to, because I trust Steve. I know when I come into that restaurant, he's going to make something that I'm going to love.
Right.
Like, I don't think I've ever gone in there and not been served something that I absolutely loved. And I really appreciated that he just stepped back and said, you guys are the experts here, and you do your thing. And
Yeah.
it was so awesome.
That was an interesting project because, I guess audience, when you were talking about Brandon and like his sensitivity and responding and stuff, audience is always what we go back to, because ultimately at the end of the day, it is, even if it's a passion business, it's still, or a lifestyle business, it still is a business, and profit is good for several reasons. One of which is doing your thing and staying open,
right,
and continuing to like enjoy your work, right? Mm-hmm. And that was really an interesting project because the other two restaurants that we recently didn't have like an expectation attached to them, but people who went to Bistro Europa like loved Bistro Europa.
Yeah,
and
they
were
had a
like,
pretty diehard clientele following.
God. Yeah,
It was almost like, drinking the Kool-Aid
yes,
with the clientele.
if
there.
you went there,
we were Kool-Aid drinkers.
Yeah,
we
no,
were
me
Kool-Aid
too,
drinkers, right?
Yeah.
Like you went in, you expected to see Steve and Ellen, you knew the whole staff, you expected there to be something really freaking weird on the menu.
You expected Wu-Tang Clan to be playing in the
Wu-Tang, yeah, like some weird, like Steve would come out and do something, like say something like weird or inappropriate, and then be like super delightful, and like the food was great, and it was this very special little place, and so they were going from that, living in the confines of a brand they inherited, to creating their own space, but knowing that they'd have to appeal to the same customers and new customers to fill
right,
the
because
restaurant.
they're 3 times as big as they
Oh
were.
God,
Right.
yeah, it's huge.
Yeah.
So it was really interesting because we had to kind of meet the needs of the public and the needs of the Gedras and the needs of their business and
their existing diehard fans.
their fans and their staff. I mean, it was
Yeah.
really, and the farmers they work with and committed to. I mean, it was really interesting, and I was so happy with the way that came out. Do you want to tell them how the custom font came about? I think that's really interesting.
Yeah. I would love to talk about the other restaurants that we did too,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
And then there's a big announcement that we put out today too
Yeah,
that we have to
we'll
talk
talk
about.
about.
But so,
No rush, Brandon.
No,
Just
no,
take a deep breath. You're fine. We got time.
So when we first met with them, we came to the new space and just wanted to see it, to start getting a feel for it. And they'd put up this like cardboard sort of shoddy hand painted sign that said the Black Sheep. And from the moment that we saw that, I mean, that was just so representative of them. Just like get it out there, like
Right,
just
smack
like
it on there, but also
Yeah.
not willing to just pretend like they weren't there. They
Right.
the big that's
They
Steve.
were
Like,
proud
I'm
of this
here.
place. Yeah, exactly.
So from there, when we developed our initial identity concepts, because they came to us with a name, so we created the identity for it, and that was one of the one of the first ideas was to create custom lettering, just that was hand painted, a little more refined, I think, than what they.
Well, perhaps.
Right,
I
than
think
what
I
they
have a
threw up
picture
there.
of that original sign. So
like spray painted.
Yeah, I think it was like a neon color, if I recall correctly. But so that was the idea to make something that like had a very rough hand done, custom, representative of them kind of identity. And then otherwise to be very mindful of how it was used and to create something that was quite refined and clean elsewhere,
Right.
so that you had this balance between that.
And Tim did the logo.
Tim,
right?
yeah, Tim did
So-
the lettering.
Yeah, Tim Stazak, who's a designer at Block Club. I just remember him going into the basement with like a can of black paint and taking these like sheets of paper, and he painted out each letter in the Black Sheep, and then he scanned them in and he started to manipulate them, and it was this really cool juxtaposition of like technology, using technology
right,
to
with like
create it.
hands-on, old
Yeah.
school.
And and I think it's also like representative of what they're doing there too, because it's like this like really innovative food, but also it's just really fucking good.
And it's super rustic and based in rooted in really old school cooking.
It's that dichotomy again, of like old and new. So it's
really fun.
It's cool.
Yeah.
Well, and I think the thing that's interesting about Buffalo proper is it's similar in that, well, and even Jim's restaurant, but it's similar in that, there's a lot of hype among the hardcore food and drink community of the area about John Carroll coming back to town and about Ed Forrester cooking in a restaurant again. And so a whole lot of pressure. And John Carroll and I have actually talked about this, and he was sweet enough to credit my whole Rochester versus Buffalo restaurant thing with part of the reason why he decided to really spend the money and the effort to have somebody else brand his business for him, which is very sweet of him, and I'm glad he occasionally listens to me. but I'm sort of interested in, there was and I even hate to bring it up, but they had a name change at the last minute due to a lot of drama and whatever.
It's important to talk about.
It happens, right?
Totally
and so how do you handle that where you've like branded this whole business, you've got this whole thing themed out and lovely and beautiful, and then 24 hours, 48 hours before opening, you find out they've got a whole new name and you've got to try to make it all work. And I would say that whether people love or hate the old name, or like the new name, however people feel about the name, the branding is very cohesive and continues to work with the current name. So
sure. So I'll speak to this, and I think Patrick wants to say something about this too.
All I wanted to say is that the way we handled that at first was 2 words: "Holy shit!" And then I'll hand
I think
it off
that's
to
the
Brandon.
same way that John and Ed and all those guys handled it too.
Yeah, it's a good thing that we weren't sitting next to them when they told us this, because there's initially we're like, oh shit, what are we gonna do?
Yeah, no, I have a business card from one of them with their original business name on it. I mean, they were like Flynn,
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
But as we thought more about it, and again, it's understanding the concept of the restaurant and the visuals that we started to create around the other former identity and the name for that, and we realized not much it didn't have to change too much once we came to the name. A lot of the things that we were already working on could work just as beautifully with this new name. So it wasn't actually that much of a challenge after we got past that initial shock.
I think it was a mental thing, when the restaurant was going to be called Blood and Sand,
right?
And we thought that's like a really killer name. We really liked it.
Which, for those who don't know, that's the name of a cocktail,
right?
And also
old
movie,
great
right?
movie. Yeah.
So everyone on the team had watched the film, and it was fun to kind of put something down. They had come up with a name, and so we were tasked with building the identity to represent that. And I think that was the case in all 3 of the restaurants. They all had been named already, and so we were just brought in for the visuals. And it was really interesting after everyone had that oh shit moment, and was like, oh my gosh, we have 3 days or something, 72 hours to get this done and reprint everything and come up with everything and change the Facebook page name and all of that stuff.
It's a lot. You realize how much you've done over the course of many weeks when you have to change it all 3 days before.
And also, how do you position this? And how do we help them that?
And how do you communicate this to the public and not create a big, backlash or silliness that happens in the media sometimes?
Yeah, I think it all went off well, though.
I think it all went off well.
People ended up liking the new name a lot more.
Yeah, a lot of Western New Yorkers responded so much more favorably.
A lot of people didn't understand what Blood and Sand is.
Right.
And that's the one thing that I think that you could never want to be in a situation is where you're explaining your name to somebody.
Right.
I was at a spinning class.
It's the one thing I know about naming a business is that you don't want to ever have to explain it to anybody.
I know. I was at this class at Biker Bar, and it's 6 a.m. on, I don't know, the middle of the week. And the restaurant's going to open on Friday, let's say. And there's, I'm on the bike and I'm spinning and we're warming up, and a woman behind me and her girlfriend start talking about what they want to do this weekend, and they wanted to go to Buffalo proper, and one of them chimes in and says, oh, I like the new name so much more than the old name. And it was really funny to hear. People just heard blood and they didn't bother to investigate anything. It's an unfortunate side effect of sort of picking an esoteric or interesting name. But I just want to make a point that I think what I really love the most about the branding for Buffalo Proper is that Buffalo Proper could be a really masculine, macho scenario between all of the mustachioed,
vested wall climbing bartenders who are there, and Ed's food being, it's beautiful, but it's also, it's got some meatiness to it. It's a lot of very masculine things on the menu. And even the branding is like navy blue and gold. It could be seen as very masculine, but it's also graceful. The cocktails, the branding, the food has this grace to it that makes it very approachable and female friendly, even though you would think if you just saw this menu laying somewhere that this was like a dude bar. And I just think that Brandon, the vision that you guys came together with, how elegant and beautiful all of that branding is, really helped seal that deal.
Thank you. Thanks. Yeah. A lot of actually what we've done is still to come out. The final menus are going to be coming out in the next couple of weeks, and the new cocktail menus, the final ones. Our initial plan was to just create this temporary menu, which has been out for a while now, and we're just very excited about what's to come for it, because it's going to just take things up that much higher.
Right.
So, yeah.
Well, so to be fair, let's just spend a couple minutes talking about Ocean.
Absolutely.
And then I have a few random questions for you before we jump into just divulging this big announcement that happened today, right? And kind of hashing that out. So what's really interesting to me about Ocean is, again, it's Chef Jim already owned a restaurant that has had the same branding and feel, and even some of the menu items for a really long time. It's a sort of a classic people go to and expect, to get their favorite thing and have the same experience all the time. Me too. Shango. I adore it. Yeah. And but Ocean just feels like a completely different. It does not feel like it's even owned by the same person. Not in a way that sheds bad light or good light on either one. It just really feels so different, and that's a really rare thing. Typically, when a chef owns several restaurants, there's some cohesive moments there between them. The menu and the look and the vibe and the way the servers behave and all that, and it really feels like two very different restaurants. And did you guys intentionally, was there a discussion about whether or not the design and vision for Ocean would be married in any way to sort of, because Ocean is a god, right?
It's the god wife of Shango.
Right.
Apparently.
So, you could have really gone. I know he didn't want another New Orleans restaurant in approach food-wise, but you could have really gone with some very similar theming in terms of design, and yet you guys really used the design of the building and what the architects did, which is very deco. So talk to me a little bit about that.
Well, the interior really drove a lot of the brand.
And for people who don't know, the frescoes have been there forever, and it was part of the deal, is that the frescoes needed to stay and they needed to remain untouched.
So, absolutely. So from the moment that we walked in, looking at the frescoes, we walked in sort of midway through the renovations. The frescoes immediately called out the terrazzo flooring, and the patterns in that were very deco too. And so there was just a lot of opportunity in that to create it just seemed to lend itself well to like the era and feeling that they were creating in there, to make something that was just soft and beautiful, and using the color palette of the ocean and just
beautiful stuff. Brandon.
Yeah, thanks. Just to go there, it was again another. All three of them, they were really easy to work with, and they all just responded pretty quickly and favorably to the work that we were creating. But it was. I mean, if you've been, you've seen that any instance of the brand that we created is a lot of patterns that are deco also, but in that palette. And you can see some of the continued patterns in the floor and that sort of thing. So it was fun.
Well, I think I have to credit Brandon with, he and I sometimes have, we have very different roles at work, and one of my big responsibilities is business development and looking out for the best kind of interests of the company and the employees and whatnot. And, Brandon's always pushing us to try new creative things. And so so he had conversations with, John and Ed, and with Jim at Shango, and with the Gedras, before, Black Sheep was opened, about had like, late night, maybe over a couple of drinks, had like branding discussions with them and whatnot. And so he asked me to kind of reach out to these guys and talk to them and kind of formalize this stuff. And in all honesty, it's not the work that I would necessarily prefer to do. I typically like working with marketing teams and marketing
Sure.
directors, and because it's very difficult. Like I always say, I'm a horrible client because as a guy running a business, you have lots of other responsibilities, and it's wonderful as an agency to work with a marketing director and their team whose only job is marketing, right? And so when you're a chef and an operator and you're opening a restaurant, you have a million and one things on your plate. And I think Jim's vision at Ocean of the menu and of the building, and it lent itself together so nicely that the work became really easy for us. And one of the things that I think is really interesting from a business perspective about the work you did at Ocean and the other places that was really smart is that we had 3 chef owners that were really innovative and very committed to the local farm to table movement. And not just a movement, but like that was like a permanent part of what they it's always part of their decision making, right? And as
you guys have said before, sometimes fresh is better than local, but
fresh food, but a menu that changes all the time.
Yes.
So one of the things I thought was really smart that Brandon, Julie Malloy, and Tim Stazak from Block Club did is that a lot of the work we did, and Ocean's a great example of that, is that we designed kind of like templates and taught them how to use the templates
so that they can make a new menu for themselves.
Yeah,
all the time.
without having to pay an agency. Like, because we
don't
want to do that.
And I think a lot
basis.
of people do not understand. A lot of restaurants who do hire people who are not professionals, but maybe they're sort of freelancers or their kids, who are in school or whatever, hire somebody to build their website or to make their menus for them, and then they're incapable of adjusting the hours on their website or printing new menus, and they're really sort of at the hands of somebody who really doesn't want to do that work, because how much can you really charge for it anyway?
And then we're charging a rate of like $100-something an hour
to print a new menu.
And we don't want to do that, and they shouldn't have to pay for that.
Yeah.
And
I will say we have one client who we rebranded a couple of years ago and created some brand standards, and then he took the restaurant, or the menu design, and he just ran with it, and I've never seen anybody do that well on their own. And I'm speaking about Tommy Lombardo.
Oh yeah,
and he's continued to
big
to
kudos
carry,
to Tommy.
Yeah, big kudos to Tommy.
I saw the post you guys put up about how he had taken the branding and used it on the sign in the restroom.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it was like the sign above the urinal in the men's restroom is so freaking on brand and perfect. I was peeing in the toilet, and I'm looking at this, and I'm going like, "Oh my gosh, Tommy, like you really get it."
Yeah, that was a while ago. I remember that though.
I bet it's still,
and that rebranding was perfect because it took the classic, quality experience that is Lombardo's, but also shows the modern innovation that is happening there as well. I've said many times personally, in private to people and probably on my Facebook, that Lombardo's is one of the few places that gets it where they keep their standards for their clientele that has been eating there for 30 years.
Yeah, they're an institution.
But they've also found a way to really innovate part of their menu, and you see people in there who have been there eating there since they for 50 years next to people who have never been there before and who are very young and very hip. And the branding is what has really married all of that. The branding and the redecoration of the restaurant has really made all of that feel cohesive and not awkward. And
totally.
Yeah.
Tommy's a lot of the reason to credit that change.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Obviously the food has really turned up a notch too.
And Brandon, can you talk about too? I just think the physical menu design of like the Black Sheep, of like working with Sean Rafter on those menus and the printable stuff, and then so that was super custom, and then with Ocean, this like very standard like menu holder, and like how you made those both seem really personal.
Sure. So for the Black Sheep, that was the first menu. It was just the way the projects happened. But when we did the Black Sheep, we immediately had this idea to put the menus on board so that it would be easy for them to. It was just appropriate for the brand too, but just to have these sort of clipboards with rubber bands on them. We found these really great public domain sort of old line drawings that we pasted onto the back of them.
Yeah, I love those.
Oh,
yeah,
thanks.
like we were in there by hand. Like they bought us like a pizza.
You were
from
crafting.
Lenovo, and we were like,
we went into the restaurant when they were
Podging
about to
it,
open, and we were using Mod Podge and doing that.
That was super fun.
But that was again something that they'd be able to take care of in house, and that was like fitting to the very casual atmosphere there. And then the next one, Ocean, they used just a pretty standard backer for their menu, but we created something that would, again, work very well for them. It was very beautiful.
Well, and it was what was I thought really smart about what the design team did is that they created almost like a letterhead. What I mean by that is like the top and bottom of this paper was like really beautifully printed with like Pantones, right? Like it was
metallic Pantones.
Metallic Pantones. So it's like had that kind of like pearlescent, like ocean feel. These really soft, like pastel but deco colors, and like silver was in there. And then I think we like helped them like work with our guy that we lease our copy machine from.
Yeah,
so
like
they
could do all of that. Yeah.
So that they could like and got them hooked them on Creative Cloud so that they could like use InDesign to change the menus up and print it out. And the listing, the weekly or monthly changes, however often they change it, is printed in just like black ink through a copy machine.
Right. So it looks custom and highly detailed,
exactly.
but you figured out a way to make it work with the tools that they have access to.
Yeah, and this like great shell was just like a standard
And these
menu
clients
shell in
got,
beautiful colors.
I mean, this is just fun for people who know design. They all got Adobe Creative Cloud.
Well, the idea, I use InDesign every day. The idea of these chefs using InDesign, I have to say, slays me.
I wish you could have sat on my shoulder when I taught Steve Gedra how to use InDesign.
That's what I was just thinking about, actually.
Like they listen and they do it, and to their credit, they like learn something new, and it's awesome. Like
so different from
Like,
what
totally.
a chef normally does.
it's not like Microsoft Word.
But
Right.
they really
Comic Sans.
it's a big
Comic
part of it.
Sans. Let's not have that conversation. We'll be here another hour.
But we said to Gedra, your steak frite just went up quite a bit in price, and granted the portion is big enough for two people, so
Yeah.
and it's incredible. But you can't have a $45 steak on your menu and not have a beautifully designed menu and an overall well executed brand.
Right.
And so that was kind of like the reminder that I gave to him as he's sitting
As
next
he's,
to me
like,
and huffing and puffing as we're going through the design.
InDesign.
It's
Right.
all part of the experience,
Yeah.
right? So like when you go to a like
Well, that's
the
what I
food needs
wanted to
be
talk
good,
to
the
next.
visuals,
Is like
yeah.
this immersive experience where, which I mentioned talking about earlier, where the thing is the food is great and the food is the reason people are there for the most part. But the food translates to the vision behind the food translates to more than just the food. It translates to the experience from the second that you would pull up or when you see their branding somewhere randomly and decide to go there, walk in the building, how you're treated by the hostess, where your coat is put, where you're seated, the silverware. I mean, there's not anything that isn't part of that experience. And it's why I think chains, sadly, are so successful, is because they create a very immersive experience that becomes extremely predictable, and human beings love predictability, right?
And chains go back to audience. Each chain, there's a different audience, and there may be overlap, but like, if you go to Bonefish,
Who goes to
or
Starbucks isn't
Starbucks,
going to
or
Tim
you go to
Hortons
Al-
for the
yeah,
most part.
whatever.
Right.
Like you have your own. Like they know their audience. I think
Right.
the average Starbucks customer goes there 18 times a month and spends more than $3 on each.
I know, of course
visit.
you know that, Patrick.
No, but I mean that's like super fascinating, right? Because they figured out how to get a person in there as many times as
18
possible.
times a month.
And like, man, if you do anything 18 times a month, like you really must love that,
Right.
I don't think I do anything 18 times a month.
Yeah, no,
Well,
I think about that.
Yeah, well,
I mean,
other than, like
I'm sure you do
hygiene.
something,
Like,
right? No, but there's I
This
guess
could go very wrong. So let's just move on.
let's take it. No, so no, my point is that like it goes back to the idea of knowing who your audience is and creating an experience for them, and I would hope that we're talking about some all-star chefs. Like good food should be like great, incredible food should be like the bottom, like that should be completely expected.
Right.
We always talk about that in our industry, like when we're being compared to our competition, like great, smart, innovative, creative design, like that should be like expected.
Right.
Like,
I mean,
of
your
course we
logo
should
is
have-
"We Want Better,"
right.
right?
Exactly. Right. So like the food should be incredible, and it should be fresh and delicious and inspiring and adventurous and amazing and wonderful. And then, okay, so how do you build on that? If that's the baseline, how do you build
Right.
and build and build and build
how do you
something
create
better?
a story around that and that is authentically representative of your business so that people are attracted to it? And all those things that you were just talking about, I think it's important to note that every single interaction that you have and then your walk away, like your takeaway perception of that is the true brand.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
It's not
Beyond
just
the logo,
it's not just the
beyond
visuals.
the website, right.
And so having alignment with your client is also really important, just really understanding them, which is why I think that, in my opinion, the three brands that we executed here were done well because they were representative of their vision and our vision, and we came together to make something that just did what it needed to do.
Right, and speaks clearly to the client that would appreciate that
Right.
location. And I think that's a challenge for a lot of chef-owned businesses, is even understanding really who their client is. If they're opening a brand new place or they've never owned a restaurant before or whatever, like, how do you know who your client's going to be, and how do you make that decision out the gate? You can change the menu 6 months in. You can change the price points. You could technically, I guess, change some of your visuals, but you would not
really
want to do that.
expensive, yeah.
You wouldn't want to do that when you've spent all this energy and time, like, you know, and really honestly, in today's social media, Yelp-driven, Twitter feed world, you can't turn things around as quickly as you'd like to think, because that stuff just hangs around forever, you know?
Well, and that's where, like, you know, advisors come in. So, you know, companies like Block Club and there are other advisors that they work with, I think can kind of give them some ideas. Ultimately, at the end of the day, it's their business, and they know how much they can spend and how much time they have. But, you know, I think right off, how many of us go to really, like, hole-in-the-wall dive bar restaurants and walk away and have the most, like, wonderful experience?
No, I love that.
Yeah,
that's
like,
my favorite.
Right, because the staff
It's
is endearing.
authentic.
Yeah.
You know,
Like-
that's like, it doesn't try to be anything other than what
Well,
it
and
is.
I'm not walking
Exactly.
into the Old Pink looking for a cocktail.
No.
You know, I
You
want
want, like, a
I'm
beer
going to
and
drink PBR.
I just
Hopefully
kind
in
of-
a bottle, so you don't get some.
Well, no
you know.
glassware.
Yeah, no
at
glassware.
the Old Pink.
Yeah, I have a
No
weird
glassware.
thing about the Pink, and I'll just put this out there. I find that if I go there and I drink out of an actual glass, I get a cold right away.
Oh, no.
If I drink out of a bottled beer, I don't ever get sick.
Well, normally
I
when
haven't
we're at
gotten a
the
cold
Pink,
in years,
we
so I'm just
play-
going to put that out there.
We played this game that our friend Nicole came up with called Hot Lava, or at least, you know, we've learned about it from Nicole, where, you know, they have the checkered floor.
Yes.
So, like, the idea is, like, you all have to step on, like, black tiles or white tiles, and you can't step on both. It's, like, one or the other. And so it's a
you
great
only
game
find
to play.
yourself at the Pink at late hours.
Well,
and-
right. So at
and
4
it
in the
gives you
morning,
That is a-
trying to stay
that is
on
a-
the black tiles would be a challenge.
And it's also
especially-
a purpose for
with-
what else am I doing here?
Right. Well, PBR and steak sandwiches, not such a bad.
Not so bad.
steak sandwiches
They used to
I
have
just
a
had my
chicken
first
and
one. It
corn
was so
night
good.
that was
You know that there's
awesome.
a Facebook page dedicated to the Old Pink steak sandwich.
I didn't.
It's been around forever. It's hysterical.
I'm not
People
surprised.
are obsessed.
I'm not surprised at all.
Delicious.
Anyway, so really quick before
Yeah.
we get to the talking about the big announcement that came out today.
Sure.
What is your advice, just out the gate, to somebody who's thinking about opening their own restaurant and has concerns about being able to find room in their budget for branding, or is intimidated by the idea of handing that job over to somebody else? Sort of, what is your basic take on that? Because I'm sure this must be a conversation you have often.
My only response to that, and I think Patrick could probably answer this better, is just start by understanding and appreciating what that can do for you, and have a willingness to trust somebody else to do, a professional to do what they do, just as you do what you do.
Right.
That's all I can say to that.
Yeah, so the advice I would give would be similar to most businesses that are starting up. I think that starting a business, if it is your first business, is a really brave venture, and I think there's some sort of, like, heroism in America about, like, being an entrepreneur, and I think people, like, get like, we live in an age of celebrity entrepreneurs like Mark Zuckerberg and, you know, and like Tony Hirsch and like Jeff Bezos and all those guys and Steve Jobs and you know, so people get really excited when you take the chance to start a business, but most people have no idea what they're doing because they've never done this before, and that's totally okay. So I don't think restaurants fall into a different category. I think there's, like,
Right.
some sound business stuff. But I think the difference between a restaurant and another business is that the restaurant is like, they're on all the time and they're creating something all the time, right? So,
Right.
like, again, you're only as good as your last meal. So I think that there are a lot of resources available to help a person starting out that they should take advantage of. So if you live in, like, the Western New York area, the Small Business Development Center is a free service at Buff State.
I've used them.
Amazing. Yeah, I
Yeah,
used them to
fantastic
start.
resources.
When we started our business 8 years ago, we worked very closely with the
Yeah,
business
and
advisor.
I can tell you that half the restaurants in town have used them for something.
Yeah,
Good.
I mean, because, like,
They're
at
great.
the end of the day, you you need to be a profitable business. Sometimes people say, "Oh, the money doesn't matter." Well,
or
no.
if you do something you love, the money will come.
No, the money does really fucking matter. You know,
It really does.
It really does.
If you can't pay your employees or pay the guy
Or
who's
yourself.
dropping off the produce so that you can even make the food to serve to guests, how are you ever going to,
It's really important, and it's profitability is a really good thing because it allows you to fully realize your vision.
Right.
You know, so you've got to have first a really sound business plan, and not a business plan that lives on the shelf, one that you're constantly evolving and working with. You also have to have a really strong vision of where you're going. So, like, what kind of business do I want to be in 5 years? And like working every day to realize that. And then 5 years from now, you have what kind of vision what kind of business am I going to be 5 years from that point? So,
and I think it's really hard in a mercurial, intense day-to-day business, whether you're working in small retail and you're the sole staffer, right, for the most part, or you're working in a restaurant where it is just hectic and
all the
hairy all the time, that the idea of looking forward 5 years in any kind of like solid way where you literally have an idea of what you want it to be like other than just suspending where you are today, really challenging.
It is super challenging. We talk all the time about the idea of working on your business and working in your business. And, you know, when you're a chef owner, you're working on and in. And chances are, you know, working in your business is going to take the majority of your time. There's always going to be something to do. It takes a lot of discipline to step back and say, hey, I need to work on my business for the health of my business, for the health of my employees, for the health of my sanity. And because, you know, people get burned out. And, you know, it's really easy when you're physically making something, whether it's like what we do in design or what a chef's doing in the back of the house in the restaurant. I mean, it's really, really easy to get burned out.
It is.
So, you know, taking home a salary, paying yourself,
It's kind of huge.
it's something you should be really
Because if
proud
you're
of.
struggling with being impoverished while you're trying to be creative and multitask constantly and deal with any family challenges you have with being a business owner, I mean, that's just an overwhelming burden.
So let's say you're putting your projections together, right? And you think, well, I don't need to pay myself because I'm going to take my money out of the profits. I'll take a distribution or whatever. And, you know, I always call these things like $10,000 mistakes. Like how many $10,000 mistakes can you not make in your first couple of years in business? Because, you know, like you don't do this, you get a fine, you know, so you want to limit those to as few as possible. Well, so let's say, you know, you think, I'm going to make $50,000 or $100,000 this year in profits. I guarantee in your first year, you're going to be so wildly off in one way or the other, probably lower, that like you won't take a distribution, and that sucks. And then you're not paid, and then you're working and not getting paid. And you know, money isn't everything, but, you know, money allows you to, go out and enjoy an evening that you have off with your friends.
How about just pay your bills without being worried?
Yeah, live in a comfortable apartment.
And
Not have the personal stress and the business stress, because that we've been there. Brandon, you know, for me and Brandon being a couple and owning the business together, and that's some of the best advice that I could give someone is limiting the amount of stress and making sure you pay yourself just something to feel like you're being rewarded for the hard work you're doing.
Well,
everyone else is getting paid.
And to be able to do that, you have to have a vision and have your business be branded in a way that the customer knows what they're getting, so that you're attracting the kind of clientele you want.
Yeah,
so just have to. I mean, really, it comes down to having a really solid business plan in advance that, as Patrick said, doesn't just get put on a shelf. That is considered all of these things,
as opposed to sort of just shoestringing your way through it.
Think about this too. Like if whether you've gone to formal school to be a chef, or you've learned in kitchens and taught yourself organically. We heard this speaker from Pentagram speak a couple weeks ago, and he said, be a fucking sponge, you know? And so his advice was learn as much as you can. And, you know, again, whether you're in school or informal training, like you learned as much as you can.
Right.
And it's okay to admit that you don't know what you don't know. And if you're a great chef and you've spent your, you know, teens and 20s learning how to cook, chances are you didn't have time to go to business school.
Right.
Or like, you know, take a bunch of like classes and get your MBA.
Right.
So like either find a partner who has those skills, or make a commitment before you invest hundreds of thousands of dollars into it that you might never have the chance to invest again into this business. Take the time, even if it's 6 months or a year or several years, to learn what you don't know.
Right.
Because
and
that
to
is
hire people to help you with other
exactly.
projects.
It's gonna be the best insurance policy you can give yourself.
So talking about an insurance policy, let's talk about this new business. So today, Katie Krawcheck drops off this press release to me at the office. Beautiful press release, just gorgeous stuff. And of course, I was very excited about it because it involves you guys and it involves the folks from the Mansion on Delaware Avenue, who I'm a huge fan of. And so the Richardson, which is like the most exciting thing ever, right, is finally about to like totally blow up and has come forward with its vision publicly for the first time, really, truly, since all of the discussions about it becoming what it's going to be. And I'm going to let you talk about it because, of course, you guys are the ones responsible for all of this beauty. And so I would appreciate it if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit about that. See, and I'm not even saying the name or anything. See how good I'm being? I'm going to let you do it all.
You really tease us the whole time.
So for the past 18 months, we've been hard at work with the team at the Mansion Group, starting with surveying the public and just to get their perception, to brand positioning, developing names, building a true brand around this for the new hotel and conference center that's going to open.
Right.
The name is Hotel Henry Urban Resort Conference Center. And this is going to be something that's just absolutely incredible for Western New York, as if there weren't enough excitement around the building. The confidence that we have in the Mansion Group is just, I'm just so stoked for what this is going to be.
And if I can interrupt you really quick, Brandon.
Of course, Patrick. Brandon, are you getting used to this yet? I'm just teasing Patrick.
I'm the worst.
My life. This is Patrick interruption. So.
No, but I think I want to tie these things back together because like this is a project that's not opening until 2016, and the owners of the hotel had the foresight to put out an RFP in 2000. When did we start working on this? 2012 or 13?
2013.
2013, and had a competitive process to find an agency to help them develop this hotel that wasn't going to open until 2016. And I think, talk about like
the only kind of foresight we see like that in this area is government.
Well, this was non-government. This was private business, which was really exciting.
Very smart business people.
Yeah, and they experienced business people knowing that they needed help and creating a brand to support an investment of
an incredible project.
What, $60-70 million? It's going to be It's going to be around. I mean, the owners of this property are probably, by the time the lease on this building ends, are probably going to be dead. And we're going to be really, really, really old. I think maybe we'll be dead. I don't know, but I guess the point is that like they had the foresight to invest in this, knowing that they're making a huge investment in the future.
Right.
And Brandon and the team did an awesome job.
The video, so impeccably beautiful, and just the color usage. Oh my God, I was dying.
Thanks.
I was like,
Welcome to the process. It's so cool.
Yeah, well, I touched briefly on the process of creating the brand for the hotel, what we went through to get there. Very briefly, I kind of felt that a bigger announcement, because Hotel Henry had a lot of the spotlight in this, and this project is so multifaceted, between the fact that it's a hotel, it's a conference center,
plus the culinary aspect
right,
of it.
and so there's this culinary aspect. It's also going to be an events space that's going to be really beautiful too. But the culinary aspect, this 100 acres, the kitchens at Hotel Henry, has been, again, something that we've been very excited about throughout the process, because we really love, I didn't mention this yet, but we are really passionate about hospitality, but food and
You're
restaurant.
Obsessed. I mean, that's part of why we're all such good friends.
Yeah. I mean, that is the basis of almost all of our
talk about.
conversation.
If this were sports, it wouldn't be.
We
wouldn't be here.
Yeah, for sure.
But I mean, 100 acres is going to occupy the entire first floor of the towers portion of the building, and it's quite an expansive space. And it's there's a lot that they're actually not going to release. They're going to spend the next several.
Yeah, there was
2
a
years.
lot of ambiguity in that press release, even though it was 2 pages long. I read
know.
all of it.
But what I think we can talk about now is that it's very original. It's my opinion that this is something that Buffalo's not seen before.
Yeah, it feels very Toronto to me.
It's going to be a common menu, but a variety of different ways that people can eat and experience the space. And throughout the entirety of their day, I think it's going to just be an attraction for the entire Western New York community, people who are coming for coffee, for lunch, for dinner, and who can sit or stand or take it out onto the lawn and just have all these different kinds of ways that they experience this common menu among all these very dynamic spaces.
And brought to us by the star-studded, highly awarded mansion on Delaware Avenue.
Yes, yeah. So
they've set quite the standard for themselves. So
I know they have.
It's incredible.
They really have, and they're very visionary and they're very smart. They're just a very, very just deliberate and calculated and just very smart business group. So
they're very thoughtful.
Very thoughtful, right?
They were. This project, I think it was about 18 months we've been working on it, and doing the research, the naming, like the whole thing, soup to nuts, and just working with them. It was really a wonderful process because they were so respectful of our opinion. Also asked extremely sharp questions when we'd come up with ideas. I mean, really, really passionate, thoughtful questions from them. And there was just a huge level of respect, us for them
it was
for
very
us.
Collaborative, yeah.
And the thoughtfulness and their attention to detail and hospitality would even spill over. I mean, I remember we were doing this photo shoot for 100 Acres for something that hasn't been rolled out yet, that will be probably rolled out soon, or the public will start to see soon. And it was like the second time we kind of approached this, and Diana Principe, one of the partners in the project, like stopped by the office with like a great bottle of wine because she knew we were working late, and she was like, "Hey guys, like I just wanted to give this to you because
I love that.
Isn't that awesome? I mean,
they're...
she didn't have to do that. We weren't expecting it, and it just, it was late, and we're doing this, trying it again because the first time didn't work, and it was just like there was a mutual level of like respect and hospitality coming from them, and I think. Coming from us, going to them.
Well,
so.
For me personally, I've worked with them. If people don't know, I've worked with them for a long time. They always take care of my guest judges that come in from out of town. When I do Nickel City Chef, we hosted our James Beard dress rehearsal dinner there. And in 2008, I think, when I first started this business, it was really just me and an idea, and no planning, Patrick. I had no planning.
You're freaking me out, Christa. You're freaking me out.
A friend of mine, a really close friend of mine, introduced me to Diana and Gino, and I went and had a meeting with them, and they just looked at me and they said, "We need more of what you want to do here. Anything we can do to support you from here on out, just let me know." And they've silly things like let me use their parking lot when I needed to take a bus tour somewhere, or taking care of people that were in town. I mean, just unending support from them because, as they explained it to me, like they want to be part of a city that has this rich cultural identity, and they felt that I was helping with that. And I just can't ever thank them enough for that. And it's so exciting to know that when people come here and see Buffalo for the first time, they're going to experience Buffalo at the hands and through the vision of what happens at the mansion. I feel so good about people being there.
I think that's one of the cool things with this project is that it's not just another hotel for the leisure traveler who's coming in. This is really an attractor for high tech conferences and like the medical community and people from, I don't know what their outreach is, like 500 miles around from the center of something like that.
And please say staycation, Ersk.
Yeah,
we have to go there.
I believe
of course,
chunk, like a big chunk is from out of town. A small chunk is like staycationers, local, and leisure travelers. And they have this really neat idea of this, urban resort where they're using all of the incredible, rich cultural assets of Buffalo, the Elmwood Village, the Grant neighborhood, the parks,
the art department,
the cultural corridor, the whole thing to like. So yeah, the art department. Yeah, I like that. Actually, I like that name. This is how branding 101, right? No, so I think it's really cool that people coming into into Hotel Henry and 100 Acres will have an incredible experience there and be pushed out into the surrounding communities.
Right.
And then
instead of trying to keep everybody, because a lot of hotels, their goal is to keep you on site.
No.
You can get your coffee there, you can have your lunch there, you can go swimming, you can actually, like they want to keep all your money in their building.
And they're
like
going to have
the casinos are a perfect
they're going to
example
have a lot
of that.
that's going to want. I mean, from
you're going to want to stay. But
I'm just so excited for these brands to continue to roll out. There's a lot that's going to want to keep you there, but they're just as much going to invite and get you out into the community as well.
That's
so it's just
exciting
really
stuff.
cool.
For Brandon and I talk about this all the time. Like when we go to other cities, we like to go to hotels that we're not necessarily even staying in.
Right.
Have a drink at the bar.
Hotel bars.
Yeah,
There's-
hotel bars
I
are
love
where
a
it's
hotel
at.
bar.
They're amazing, right?
They're my favorite.
You meet super cool people.
Besides the little pink kind of bars.
Yeah. Well, they each have a special place. So, but no, I think this will be one of the first of its kind in the area too, for a great place to hang out, because the public
We're all going to want to hang out there.
Yeah.
we
Nice.
haven't been allowed in that building except for hardhead tours over the last couple of years. So I remember growing up thinking wow, this building's incredible. Wonder how can I go in there? And besides breaking in, you couldn't get in, right? So now as the public, we can go in there too. So there's this great osmosis of coming and going of people through Hotel Henry and 100 Acres that really is all part of the vision of the Mansion Group and the Richardson Complex board of directors that wanted to make this more public.
There's more and more and more to come, right?
Yeah, this is only one part of the building.
So we have to go. But Brandon, can you tell people, please, what the website name is that they can go experience the incredible design that you've created around the vision from the folks at the Mansion and Hotel Henry, please?
Yes, it's hotelhenry.com.
And the Block Club website is currently undergoing reconstruction. How many times can you guys redo your website? I mean, for Christ's sake.
Oh, well, it's been a while.
It's been a little while. And
blockclub.co.
Yeah,
right?
blockclub.co.
Basically, we've been working on a lot of projects over the past, I would say, 18 months to 2 years, many of which we couldn't talk about for a while. So we started to feel that almost anything that in our case studies, our portfolio on our site was just so outdated.
I
so
get that.
we're developing a new site that will be more
Very
reflective
nice.
of the work that we're doing.
Yeah, I mean, facebook.com/blockclub for the time being is a great place to get.
Moment stuff.
If you're if you need to know up to the minute details.
So I just kind of want to wrap things up by pointing out that one of the things that everybody says is that we eat with our eyes first.
Yeah.
And I would say that meal doesn't start with the plate.
No,
It starts, with the first time you see the brand and the first time you look it up on a website and the first time you walk in the door, and it continues through until you leave. And so, people, these are things that you need to think about.
Sure.
And the Block Club is here.
And be critical of, too.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Right.
You and I always, you and I
that's
get
what
really
we do
critical.
really well.
So,
It's important
We
to be
saved that conversation for private.
totally.
Anyway, you guys, thank you so much for hanging out with me
thanks
today.
for having
And thank
us.
you, Tom Burtless, for listening to us and taping us and everything.
Thanks, Tom.
Thanks. And
Yeah, thank you,
Hydraulic
Tom.
Hearth, we're going to eat the pizza now.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks. Bye.
Good night.